What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about a movie that I got to check out a little bit early, and that movie is called Shrapnel. Directed by William Kaufman and written by Chad Law and Johnny Walters, Shrapnel stars people like Jason Patric, Cam Gigandet, Kezia Elwin, Mauricio Mendoza, and many more. So before we get too far into this, as I typically like to do with these early reviews, I want to say a big thanks to those kind folks over at Saban Films for sending me over an early screener for one of their movies. Always a pleasure to check out any of their movies early, whether I enjoy the film or not. And today we're talking about a film that's coming out later this week on July 28th of 2023, known as Shrapnel. And I'll start this off right out of the gate by saying that unfortunately I was not a huge fan of this movie in very many ways at all. This is a fairly familiar premise. This movie takes place in Texas and focuses on a father who is now on a hunt for his daughter who has been abducted, and he's got a past with the military and is going to use a very particular set of skills to go and save his daughter. I know you're probably thinking what I'm thinking, that sounds incredibly familiar. Yeah, this is a very generic movie. I'll start this off by saying that in pretty much every way, this is a movie you've seen before. This is a movie that's been done before far better, and for me, just wasn't really something that stuck with me. I just finished watching the movie not too long ago, and I let it sit with me for just a little bit of time. Just wanted to kind of wrap around my thoughts on this movie. And what I could genuinely say on Shrapnel is that I really enjoyed the cinematography. I thought that the overall look of the film was pretty solid. There was some really good camera work throughout and some solid action throughout the course of the film as well. Though most of the action in the film doesn't start until about the 40-minute mark of the film, and thankfully it sticks around from that point on. But a lot of it is just fairly straightforward, generic gunplay. Entertaining to watch, but nothing that's absolutely substantial in a world where we have things like John Wick or Mission Impossible or the Extraction films. Action has kind of jumped to a new league these days. Not to say that we can't get these more straightforward, generic action movies from time to time, but there was nothing here that really stood out when it came to the action. Outside of the cinematography and some of the action that I did enjoy, though, I just found myself disconnected from this film. As I said, it's a familiar plot. We've seen it done time and time again, with the Taken films, as I was referring to earlier, being arguably the ones that are the most popular for this specific plot. And when it comes to this movie overall, I like to take a movie like this that has a generic plot and, just take it for what it is, enjoy it for this iteration of a story that I'm familiar with. I'm okay with a familiar story as long as it's still entertaining and has something to kind of grip onto. But unfortunately, that was not the case with this movie, as I found it to just be very just run-of-the-mill in every sense of the word. You have Jason Patric in the lead role, who I have seen in previous films, but when it comes to this movie, along with the rest of the cast, the performances overall for me range from anything from fine to wildly unconvincing. And I think a lot of that has to do with the script and the screenplay, as I found that these characters just didn't feel like real people. A lot of the dialogue felt very stiff, and a lot of times their delivery just felt very rehearsed. It felt like people who were acting, but it just felt like they needed to take another take. Maybe the script or the screenplay needed a once over, or just flat out they just needed more time to rehearse. There wasn't really much about these characters and these moments that ever really felt real and tangible, and there wasn't really a great sense of stakes either. Overall, for me, Shrapnel is just a very straightforward, generic action film that I can see getting lost in the worlds of Netflix or Hulu or Tubi, just kind of being a movie that's on there that somebody might throw on at some point, but isn't really a movie I can really see capturing audiences. There really wasn't much about this movie to even sit here and talk about that I thought was substantial. Again, the cinematography is pretty solid. There's some good drone shots over the course of the film, but the villains, who are just, pretty generic cartel members, are just exactly that, generic cartel villains that we've seen in countless films like this before. And there wasn't really much when it came to the characters that I ever found myself connected to, even the characters that we're supposed to be rooting for. The father in this film is the main one we spend time with, played by Jason Patric, and while I did, understand his journey and understand this father wanting to save his daughter, there was nothing about his character that ever really truly felt endearing, and a lot of times it just felt like he was acting in all of these sequences. So when it seems like he's brooding crying or upset about the fact that his daughter's gone, along with his wife and his younger daughter. It just felt like actors acting versus them actually feeling like characters that I could really get invested in. Another thing I have to mention here are some of the visual effects, because while most of this film is practical, using practical locations as well as practical weapons, this is a movie that has a decent amount of digital effects when it comes to blood splatter, and most of that honestly looked incredibly unfinished or just not good in any way, shape, or form. There's even a huge gun battle that happens in a household at a certain point in the film that is primarily made of wood. It's a wooden home, and they're shooting up this house left and right. And the entire time you have just little CG specks of wood chips and dust that are flying around that just look ridiculously fake, and there was never any bullet holes in the actual walls. So more often than not, it just had me laughing because just the visual effects element of this film entirely felt just unfinished. It looked cheap, it looked fake, it didn't really have anything that felt real and tangible, and seeing all these fake little wood chips bouncing off walls with no holes being put into the walls were just undoubtedly hilarious. So honestly, I don't have a whole lot to say here. As you can tell, I feel like I'm regurgitating a lot here, and I usually like to be able to talk about a wide array of things when it comes to a movie, but when it comes to Shrapnel, this review is going to be as generic as the movie is. There's really not much to say. The performances were just fine or okay. The action was just fine, and nothing about this is ever something I want to revisit. I only really can give kudos to the cinematography, and even then, This movie actually gave me vibes of a movie I saw this past year that also starred Gigandet, known as Black Warrant, which was not a good film. It made my top 10 worst of 2022, and right now I would say that this one's probably going to follow suit. So big thanks to you guys for watching. Definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about Shrapnel when you check this film out. If you came to this review because you saw the movie and you just had to hear what somebody had to say about this movie, definitely leave a comment down below. Did you like Shrapnel? Did you not like Shrapnel? And if you're one of my viewers and you're watching this long before the movie comes out, or at least a few days before the movie comes out, definitely let me know down below if this is a movie that's been on your radar. Are you planning on checking this movie out? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below. And even though I did not enjoy the film, I still want to say a big thanks to those kind folks over at Saban Films for sending me over an early screener for this one. Again, always a pleasure to check out any of their movies, whether I enjoy them or not. But I gotta be real about my thoughts on movies, and when it comes to Shrapnel, it is not a film I can recommend. So on that note, I'll leave you guys now. A big thanks to you guys for watching, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye-bye.